So we're group one. It's Nora, Claire, Andreas, Terita, Mer, Maria, Timofey, and myself. And we will talk about Agile Innovation Management. First slide, please. So the first question is to explain the ideas of design-driven innovation and how the change of technology and meaning drives innovation instead of other aspects. So as we can see in this chart here, we have two paths to follow. If we look at the first right one, we have the people and what their purpose is in different scenarios. And for this case study, we have the rain shower or shower experience that we want to look at. So what do people do today? They have a normal shower and it's for more hygienic reasons. And the purpose that they have looked at in this Rainfinity project is, can we do something else that gives another meaning to a normal hygienic shower? And they have found out that yes, there is. And that aspect you can see on the left table or the chart, where you have, instead of a market pull, for instance, that the market is demanding or asking for new features. Or if you look at the top left on technology, where you have a incremental or radical change or innovation within the technology that gives you new capabilities. We now have a design-driven, or idea at least, that we want to design and drive the technology development in a certain area based on the meaning. And the meaning in this case and the why is that you want to create an enhanced experience compared to just going into the shower and taking a shower for hygienic reasons. So how can you do that? And then they have looked at people and what they do and what you don't do in the shower, for instance, to give you an experience that you like or don't like. And one of the things that you would like to have maybe is, again, what we discussed before with the Signify cases, biorhythm adaptive showering, for instance, with lighting, with different heats, different times, and so on. And that moves into the solution phase that they have realized that they want to do, and also combine that with the business model of having an enhanced experience compared to just having a practical and hygienic showering. Next, please.
So what is important is that design thinking, it's the user-centric approach. So it is about understanding user needs and then developing insights to solve these needs. And if design is about meanings, not about form, then it's essential to understand the meaning, like Anders already said that. And what Hans Grohe did, that they discovered that in the context of the showering experience, that meaning of showering changes from mere personal hygiene to showering as a ritual. So shower becomes more than just a shower. Shower is a personal retreat. Next slide, please.
So what are the characteristics of the design thinking approach? First, as Anders and Maria spotted, it's people-centered. This means that you start from your customer or future customer. You're looking to understand what people want. It's not about what is your problem as an industry, but what is your customer problem or your customer wish or your customer need. And you need to share his feeling to understand him. So it's about empathy. It's also to use design thinking approach, you have to be highly creative because you have to consider the situation from different point of view, like kind of having an helicopter view on the problem. So you need to integrate different perspectives, and that helps you thinking of alternatives that do not exist yet.
And also the design thinking approach needs to be hands-on, which means that you should stop discussing and you should start working and start to make your ideas tangible. It requires you to prototype, and test the hypothesis. It is possible that it's possible to fail, but it's also part of a process where you can improve yourself and eventually succeed. And also another thing about design thinking approach is that it is iterative, which means that the road to success does not follow a straight line. And the more you are able to loop through the understand, create, and learn cycles, the higher chance you have for a good result. So next, please.
Okay, so now let's talk about the traditional project management or the waterfall model. So the traditional project management is sort of in step-by-step processes where you start with requirement gathering, you do a system design. When you're done with the system design, you implement it, and then you test it, then you deploy it, and then you maintain it. So the advantages of the traditional project management is that there is a fixed time plan for the project. Each step has its time limits. There's known resources and the cost of the project, at least in the beginning. Traditional controlling can be applied. The disadvantage is that modification in the project are not intended, so they might be very expensive. No flexibility towards a changing environment. Parts of the project cannot be aborted without termination of the full project, and delays, but also accelerations of the schedule cannot be treated. All of these will end up in costing more. So one of the characteristics of the waterfall model is that if you don't plan it correctly in the beginning, the process will just flush out with the wastewater and end up in nothing.
Another kind of management is the Agile project management. This is no kind of waterfall, it's a kind of cycle after cycle. You have the first cycle with create new things, learn from it, understand it, improve it, start creating again. And this again and again to come to your conclusion. There's one disadvantage, because there's no general accepted definition of Agile. What is Agile is, as I said, not defined, but an opposite thinking style is it for the traditional planning, because you just interact what will happen and what do you have to improve. The advantages of the Agile project management is a highly flexibility in terms of the project size. Also, you can be flexible in your planning time, structure, and costs are mostly independent from this. You have the dynamic adaptability to changes of the competitive environment. If there's a change, you created your solution new, learn again, and understand it also in this new way. It's also very effective under a high pressure to innovate new things, new components, and it enables the creativity of the employees because it's not step by step, it's a kind of cycle. The Agile project management also reduces the risk of bad investments due to the higher flexibility. And then we come to Timothy and Rita.
So how all the previous presenters and Nora said, IP designs leads to a permanent review cycle of the portfolio of options and scenarios for action. And thus enables the company to evolve in the direction of the different digital business models. So on the picture, you see that IP design is a process which is consisting of 3 different sequential stages. This is information obtaining, anticipating, and generating. Obtaining information, it refers to a process consisting of observing and understanding. So this is all about analyzing the environment, trends, and developments within industries and markets, with particular focus on the influences of new technologies and changes in customer needs. Anticipating means developing IP strategies for possible future scenarios. And this is followed, as you can see here, by synthetic inventing for the purpose of protecting and securing the positions. And all these processes are followed by getting the information again. So as you see from the picture, the IP design is a continuous process which supports business models throughout their market life. And Tarita will explain why IP design is agile method.
Thank you, Timothy. So the IP design focuses on the customer experience and the customer needs. So where before, for example, you had a shower and it was just used primarily for hygiene, Hansgrohe decided to focus on that particular customer experience and essentially make it into a personal retreat. And this is a great change in terms of how persons would have viewed a shower. And so focusing on that, it changes the meaning for the customer. So whereas there could be a lot of issues between what a company would like to project as the meaning of its product or service, and what the customer identifies as the meaning. So we had the case, for example, of Thermomix, where they had these issues with blades and the customer could not distinguish what was the difference between different products. So in this case, what Hansgrohe did is that they changed the meaning to the customer and they really focused on that particular customer experience, which they could have done with this agile method. And in terms of IP design, it's an iterative method. So it's constantly being developed and reviewed. And as Timothy would have shown in the diagram, it's never a straight road. It's constantly being adapted, and it goes through these different loops essentially, where you understand, you have to first understand what the customer wants, then you have to create and then learn from that. In terms of IP design, the creative ideas are therefore never lost, because even if you had an idea from a very early stage, which you may not have adopted, because at that particular point in time, the customer may not necessarily have wanted or needed that particular service or product, you can still use that at a later stage when the market is ready for it. In terms of IP design as the agile method as well, there is a lot of revision, adaptation, and change of scenarios. And these are considered to be the key features of IP design. And what this does is that it actually suppresses the possibility of negative scenarios, because you're not using the traditional approach where there's not a lot of room for flexibility or change, and you're actually constantly reviewing and you're constantly adapting to whatever the particular changes are in the environment. Then of course you suppress the possibility or risk for negative scenarios. So that brings us to the end of our presentation, and thank you very much for listening.